Hey guys, it's Real Crusade History here, and I'm coming at you today with a little tidbit of knowledge from Crusades history. Today I want to talk a little bit about transporting of supplies in a medieval army. Now, one of the things that is always kind of amusing for, if you actually study medieval history is when you see movies that are supposedly set during the Middle Ages. And there's always all kinds of funny stuff, in these movies that, kind of give you pause for laughter. But one thing I always find amusing is the portrayal of armies. And it's always kind of the same thing. It's always just a bunch of dudes on horses, just like a bunch of knights, basically, just kind of marching in, you know. And then maybe there'll be, and the other thing that they'll have is some wheeled carts, like a bunch of carts being drawn by oxen. That's their supplies. They're carrying their supplies, and it's always just it's kind of funny because you stop and ask yourself, okay, well, there's all these knights, all these guys, these warriors on horseback. Who exactly is attending to these knights? The thing about a medieval knight was he was going to be each knight, each mounted warrior was going to be attended by kind of a little team that sort of made sure he had the supplies he needed, the food for his horse, that his weapons were well cared for, that his armor and stuff was ready to go, his horse was ready for battle, and he was also going to have several horses. So a medieval army, like the actual knights, the mounted knights kind of traveling to the battle would actually be kind of a smaller part of the army. You're also going to have a lot of infantry, way more infantry than cavalry. A lot of guys, that's basically guys with spears and big shields or whatever, or archers kind of walking into battle. And also you're going to have a lot of squires who are traveling with their knights. And a squire is going to be basically a younger guy who's kind of in training for knighthood. And he's going to do that by being an attendant to a knight. It's like a personal assistant almost to a knight. And, some of the more high-ranking knights, like a count or a king, they're going to have a whole team of squires, just a ton of squires. And then the more kind of, basic kind of knights, like household knights, they're going to have like maybe one squire, or a couple. So you never really see that, though, in movies. And, I don't expect medieval, movies set in the Middle Ages to be some kind of, perfect representation of the medieval world. But it's just always kind of funny because to me, it just seems like impossible. It's like they're really portraying something that's just kind of ridiculous. And the other thing that they always do is they always leave out the mules. And I think this kind of makes sense because, when people are kind of imagining, or, people nowadays try to imagine what a medieval army would be like without doing any research, they think, well, I don't know, I guess it'd be guys on horses and probably, they're probably going to be like some animals drawing carts, like a bunch of wagons, wagons to keep their stuff in, And I guess this kind of makes sense because nowadays in our warfare, there's largely a vehicle type of transportation thing going on. We have tires, rubber tires that can be used on vehicles. But in the Middle Ages, carts were not good for long distance travel. They just weren't. Try rolling a wooden wheel, a wooden wheeled vehicle for a very long time. It can get a little bit annoying. And they break easily and they need maintenance. And they're also very awkward. Like, they don't do well over the kind of terrain that you're going to have to march an army over, whether it be hilly terrain. Try dragging a wooden wheeled cart up even a small hill or, just kind of like some rugged terrain. It's really kind of a pain, So what would you have seen a lot of in a medieval army? Well, you would have seen a lot of beasts of burden, and that's mainly going to be like a mule. It's going to be, one of these small horse-like creatures that are bred to carry burdens. And the thing about a mule is, they are very tough little animals. They can carry a lot of weight. It doesn't make them tired. They don't need a lot of water and food. They can get by very comfortably with a pretty minimal amount of sustenance, and they can go a long time. And they were bred this way. I mean, you ask yourself, why do mules and donkeys and asses and these kind of animals even exist today? There's a lot of them. They weren't used for riding for the most part. I mean, they were used for carrying supplies, for carrying equipment, for carrying whatever. A wheeled cart in the Middle Ages is going to be more of kind of like a farm equipment. It's going to be something that's used kind of to move things short distances when people are doing their daily work. But if you have an army and you need to move stuff for that army, you're going to use a lot of mules. Now, just as kind of some examples, these are from medieval Spain. James I once used 2,000 pack animals to carry 400,000 pounds of supplies to the relief of a siege. And another example from medieval Spain, the Emir of Granada, he sent 1,500 pack animals to a siege once. So this just shows, I mean, kind of the extent of beasts of burden that you're going to have in a medieval army. So if you were to travel back in time and actually watch a medieval army on the move, you would notice this. You would be like, wow, that's a lot of donkeys carrying packs of supplies. And what would they be carrying? Well, for one thing, they would be carrying equipment for knights. They would be carrying stuff that the knights would need when they'd go into battle and couldn't just like carry themselves, because they had a lot of equipment. They had different types of weapons for different situations. So every knight's going to have, maybe up to several mules, that are carrying stuff for him. And in addition, of course, these mules are going to be carrying grain, supplies, all kinds of stuff like that. When you read medieval sources, when you read medieval chronicles, this becomes very, very clear. Immediately, one of the things you notice is the obsession with mules. Mules are constantly being referenced. The number of mules in an army, that comes up pretty frequently. And they are a sign of wealth. If you have a ton of mules, you are a wealthy guy. A king is going to have a lot of mules that he can use to move stuff around. And these are the best animals for doing this job. Mules can go up into treacherous terrain. They can walk up into mountains if they have to. I mean, if you can avoid it when you're moving a medieval army, you're going to avoid mountains. But sometimes you do have to go into mountainous terrain, and mules can do it. Wheeled carts, not so good for going up into mountains. They're sure-footed animals, and this is how it's done today. I mean, people go to the Grand Canyon, they talk about riding mules in and out of the Grand Canyon. Well, I mean, this is what these animals were bred for. They were bred for this, and this is their legacy is as a war animal. You look at a mule, you don't think of warfare very often, but they definitely were animals that were heavily involved in military operations. So in the movies, medieval armies, what's their job? Their job is to look cool. It's like a bunch of knights on horses, and that's just about it, and carrying all their weapons at once, carrying big battle axes or whatever. In the Middle Ages and the actual history of what was going on, medieval armies were there to be efficient and to be effective. And so they weren't, there was a lot of support personnel, support animals in medieval armies, not just attack animals and not just warriors.